Welcome to the 700 Club, folks. If you're confused, you ought to be, because most of us are. It's a strange election going on right now. But, hey, we've had some real good candidates. They've had some interesting fights among themselves. And before long, some Republican is going to start fighting Hillary Clinton. You'll see how that goes. So you can get ready for that Donald versus Hillary. Donald Trump scored major victories in the Republican primary on Tuesday, and now it looks like he's on the road to the nomination of the grand old party.
Whether they like it or not, Pat.
Yeah, that's right.
Well, John Kasich pulled off a win in his home state of Ohio, but it looks like it's too little too late to stop Trump. And Hillary Clinton also took a huge step towards locking down the Democratic nomination. Heather Sells brings us the story.
We have to bring our party together. We have to bring it together.
Donald Trump may not have brought the party together yet, but math and momentum are now clearly on his side. On Tuesday, he won in North Carolina, Illinois, and Florida, bringing an end to Senator Marco Rubio's campaign.
While it is not God's plan that I be president in 2016 or maybe ever, the fact that I've even come this far is evidence of how special America truly is.
But in Ohio, Trump did fall to its governor, John Kasich.
We are going to go all the way to Cleveland and secure the Republican nomination.
There's no clear path there for Kasich, however. 6 weeks of primary voting have given Trump more than half of the delegates he needs to secure the Republican nomination. But anti-Trump Republicans are pressing in to prevent the frontrunner from winning the GOP nomination. The Associated Press reports that a group of conservatives plan to meet Thursday to discuss a contested convention and the possibility of a third-party candidate. Even House Speaker Paul Ryan is not ruling out the idea of being drafted by the party. On the Democratic side, Hillary Clinton clearly strengthened her hand on Tuesday, taking Florida, Illinois, Ohio, and North Carolina.
We are moving closer to securing the Democratic Party nomination and winning this election in November.
She now has at least 1,561 delegates, almost twice as many as Bernie Sanders. Sanders is hoping to make up ground in the West, where all the campaigns now head. Next week's races include voting for both parties in Utah and Arizona. Heather Sells, CBN News.
Well, you wonder what's going to happen to Hillary. Libya, falling apart. She pointed that as one of the achievements of her regime as Secretary of State. Benghazi, it was misrepresented to the American people as a spontaneous demonstration brought on because of some strange video. And they knew before they put it out that indeed it was a planned attack by an organized group affiliated with Al-Qaeda. And then, of course, there's all these emails. And she said clearly, I didn't have any emails classified on my server. Well, all except 200 or so of them. And it just goes on and on and on, lie after lie. The American people don't trust her. And yet she's the candidate of the Democratic Party. And you wonder if the FBI is going to move for an indictment this summer. So you'll have Trump, and there's no way anybody can mount a third party this late in the game. They have to register in states. They'd have to get money. They'd have to get candidates. It's not going to happen. And so Donald Trump is it. Now, I have something I'll show you real quick so you'll know what's going on. Trump right now, according to what we have, has 621 delegates. He needs another 616. And it's going to be tougher and tougher to get them. Ted Cruz pretty much is stalled out. He's got just about 400 delegates. He needs 841 more, and it just doesn't look like where it's going to come from. Now, Kasich won his state of Ohio, which is very important, but he only has 138 delegates. He needs 1,099 more. Where they're going to come from, we don't know. So That's it. Marco Rubio came out, dropped out. I, for one, can't understand it. He's a very bright young man. He has been extraordinarily successful in Florida. And how he just had a meltdown during those debates, I don't know, and how he turned on Trump and began to attack Trump instead of present a vision for America. If he'd presented a coherent vision for America, conservatives and the establishment would have coalesced around him. But, of course, they didn't do it because he started acting like an eighth grader. It doesn't make any sense. Well, our CBN News political correspondent David Brody is with us now. And, David, tell me your take on the Trump phenomenon. It's really hard to understand.
Yeah, it has all of us scratching our heads to a degree, but there is some reason for it, Pat, and there's actually quite a few reasons, but let's just start with this, and that is simply that, look, Donald Trump is doing well because, in essence, he is changing politics as usual. He's a wrecking ball. In other words, a lot of times, for years and years, we've talked about this idea that we're fed up with politicians, we're fed up with Republicans, we're fed up with Democrats. They hew to that orthodoxy of the party line, and that's it, and nothing gets done. Well, along comes Donald Trump, who, let's be honest, Pat, has basically said, you know, I want to be flexible. I might be 70% conservative, 90% conservative, 40% conservative. It depends on the issue. So he's changing politics. And I think it's not just an indictment of the Republican Party. I think it's an indictment of politics as a whole. I mean, look, he's bringing in Democrats. He's bringing in independents. He's bringing in dissatisfied Republicans. And so I think it really is an indictment overall of the political process.
Well, the other candidate that's got a number of delegates, close to 400, is Ted Cruz. Does he have any possibility?
It's going to be real tough. He's got to win 80%. 80% of those delegates, and it's going to be very, very hard for him. Look, in the Bible Belt, let's go down to the Bible Belt for a moment. In Missouri, there were a few issues as it relates to Ted Cruz. He had 4 counties that he had to really win down in the Bible Belt, southwestern Missouri. Christian County, Greene County, Stone County, Taney County. And I got to tell you, right there in those 4 counties, Donald Trump won 2 of those huge Bible Belt counties. Ted Cruz won the other 2, but it wasn't enough. And look, if Donald Trump is not just winning, you know, if you look inside the numbers, Donald Trump is winning with evangelicals that have basically gone to church a couple of times a year, you know, a few times a year, but he's also winning with evangelicals, or I shouldn't say winning, excuse me, he's doing actually better than a lot of people thought with people that are going to church more than once a week. You know, Ted Cruz is winning that group, but not Donald Trump is doing better than expected.
Well, John Kasich, of course, won the state of Ohio. That was tough because some of the polls showed Trump ahead of him. But he says he won't team up with Trump. Do you think he's just talking, or do you think he really means it?
No, I think he really means it. I don't think there's any question about that. There's been some bad blood between the two, and it's going to get worse here in the next couple of weeks. John Kasich did well. I mean, you know, he won Ohio, but it's like winning a home game for him. He had to do it, and he did. But what is his encore, if you will? If you look to the states that are coming up, I mean, you've got New York. That's Donald Trump territory. Delaware, Connecticut, Maryland. You just go down the list. Arizona is coming up next week. And, of course, Donald Trump doing very well in Arizona, the polls show, because of the immigration issue. And so it's going to be very hard for John Kasich. Well, first of all, he can't actually, he cannot get the 1237 that he needs to win the nomination. That is mathematically impossible. And so at that point, this is Donald Trump's race to lose. And, you know, a lot of people think with his rhetoric, he's doing a pretty good job sometimes of trying to lose it, but he's Teflon. He is Teflon, Pat.
He really is. Well, you know, if they have a contested, you know, people are talking about a third party, but they can't mount a third party this late in the game, can they?
No, they really can't. And you mentioned the ballot issues, and that's one issue. But here's the other part of it. Think about this for a moment. Even if Donald Trump doesn't have the 1237 in Cleveland at the convention, are they really going to try and take this nomination away from Donald Trump, a man who has brought in more Democrats, some independents, more voters overall? You know, voting is up 17, or I should say the voting electorate now 17% of voters this time around compared to 1980. In other words, the point is that voting is way, way up, and it's because of Donald Trump. So you're going to take this nomination away from him at the convention, even if he's not at that 1237 number? I mean, as Donald Trump said, you'd have riots in the streets, and talk about hot in Cleveland. My goodness, it'll be a wild summer for sure.
Well, David, keep watching, buddy. But it looks like the long knives are out there going after Trump, and Trump's going to have, because I say going to have to, he likes to respond, and he's going to go after Hillary big time. Do you know any themes that they're going to develop about Hillary?
Well, I think Donald Trump's theme is something when he wakes up every morning, he goes, you know what, that's the theme this morning. I think that's really Donald Trump's playbook, and it's kind of worked to a degree. Look, he has even said he has not even begun to go after Hillary, and wait till he gets a handle on that. And then, you know, a lot of Republican voters actually like that. They like to see the fight and to take it to Hillary, and that's been part of his method of operation all along, Pat.
Well, I can see ads with Bill, I did not have sex with that woman, Miss Lewinsky, and morphing into Hillary. And I mean, and I did not have classified emails on my server. Over and over and over again. That's just part of what you can see, and I'm sure Trump's going to play that to the hills. Well, David, thank you so much for being with us. And folks, remember, you can get David's up-to-the-date analysis and interviews on the Brody File on cbnnews.com. Well, what do you think? It
was exciting last night. It was almost like election night, you know, just watching the returns come in. And did we ever find out is it still too close to call in Missouri?
I think.
Did they call it for Trump?
Yeah, I think so.
I think David said they called it for Trump. But, yeah, it was a very exciting night. But, you know, I think that Hillary's going to play hardball. I mean, they've been in politics a long time, and everybody talks about the Clinton machine. And, you know, I think it's going to be like the fight of all fights.
She is so vulnerable. You're looking at Wall Street. I mean, she's when you get honorarium in the $500,000 and $600,000 per speech range, when you've got a foundation that has taken hundreds of millions of dollars from questionable people, when you are Secretary of State, and it goes down the list. I mean, I just cannot imagine her holding up against a withering barrage. But they've got to start early.
She's been Teflon too.
Yeah.
I mean, it's been very
The game
interesting.
is you damage your opponent early on before the real voting starts. That was what they did to Bob Dole, and that's what they'll try to do with Trump. They're going after him right now with all they've got, and Trump's smart enough, or he should be smart enough, to go after them now. She's got to be characterized as some sort of a crazy right now, and they're going to go after him as some kind of a, they will do that. And the game is, do not wait until September to let your opponent paint you into the corner. They did it with Romney. He's a privileged aristocrat or autocrat or whatever, and is out of touch. Well, in other news, President Obama is making good on his promise to nominate a Supreme Court justice. And John Jessup has that story from our CBN News Bureau in Washington. Here's John.
Thanks, Pat. That promise is being filled by the president, even though Senate Republicans have made a promise of their own not to hold hearings on anyone the president nominates. Republicans argue a Supreme Court confirmation fight in an election year would be too politicized. President Obama, meanwhile, says he's fulfilling his constitutional duty to make a nomination and urges senators to do theirs. Republicans say the choice should be up to the next president. Well, Congress has given the State Department until tomorrow to decide whether to label the ISIS slaughter of Christians in the Middle East as genocide. For many Americans, the decision is simple, but the Obama administration has been hesitant. Jennifer Wishon has a story.
Father Douglas Albazi kept this bloody shirt as a reminder. The Iraqi Christian was wearing it when ISIS terrorists kidnapped him on his way to church.
They used to put, for example, pistol in my head, handed it to Simon, just they click.
The torture continued for 9 days.
They used the hammer to broke my teeth, my nose, and my back.
Despite beheadings, crucifixions, and driving Christians away from lands they've occupied since Jesus walked on earth, State Department lawyers are reluctant to call this murder and persecution genocide. The government asked several Christian groups to collect evidence. Their 280-page report lays out known crimes against Christians, including a list of those murdered and witness statements. It includes this menu ISIS produced for men interested in buying Christian or Yazidi slaves. 200,000 dinars buys a child aged 1 to 9. And the rules? It is not allowed for any customer to purchase more than 3 spoils, except for foreigners like Turks, Syrians, and Gulf Arabs.
The word, and the only word for what is happening, is genocide.
There's ample proof, Anderson says, that ISIS wants to rid the world of Christians. In an issue of its magazine, Dabiq, ISIS published, "We will conquer your Rome, break your crosses, and enslave your women. If we do not reach that time, then our children and grandchildren will reach it, and they will sell your sons and grandsons as slaves at the slave market." The Obama administration says it doesn't want to act hastily in the Middle East, but in this case, the president would be following. The European Union, a vast majority of Congress, even the likely Democratic presidential nominee, Hillary Clinton, are all labeling this attempt at Christian extermination genocide.
This is about lives, and it's about the impact on real people on a daily basis in a setting that we couldn't possibly imagine.
According to the UN, genocide is acts committed with intent to destroy, in whole or in part, a national, ethnic, racial, or religious group. The only time the U.S. has designated a genocide while it was happening came 12 years ago in Darfur. Then lawyers determined the designation didn't require the U.S. to act. Another reason many Americans wonder why the Obama administration is dragging its feet.
I look to my blood every day, and I remember. And this is what's happened even to my people every day.
He's fortunate he's alive to remember, unlike so many of his Middle Eastern brothers and sisters in Christ. Jennifer Wishon, CBN News, the White House.
Thanks, Jennifer. In other news, evangelist Franklin Graham is traveling around the country asking Christians to pray for the nation. He's billed it the Decision America Tour 2016. Graham says neither Democrats nor Republicans can turn the country around. About 10,000 Christians prayed with Graham in Denver on Tuesday. Graham says he believes in getting involved in the political process and supporting Christians who run for office. But he also told CBN News that the most important answer is prayer.
We start with prayer. When we get up on the Capitol steps, I'm going to lead everybody in prayer and have people confess the sins of our nation, confess their own personal sins, the sins of their fathers. This is Nehemiah chapter 1. That's what Nehemiah did. Then God gave Nehemiah favor. We need favor. We need God's favor once again in this country. And the only way this is going to happen is through prayer.
You can hear more of Franklin Graham's interview, including what he says about Christians in politics, and find the schedule for his tour by going to cbnnews.com. And Pat, I can't think of a more timely call for prayer.
Absolutely. He's a brave man and a wonderful guy. We appreciate this initiative because that's the thing we need to do. And what he said is true. Democrat and Republican are not going to save this country. Only the Lord is. And we've got to call on him to bring about revival. Wendy?
Amen. Well, coming up, an outspoken and unlikely critic of mass immigration because he's an immigrant himself.
There are a lot of cover-ups. They believe that I am confused.
But he's not confused. In fact, he says he's one of the only ones speaking the truth. Find out what he has to say when we return.
Unconditional, unconditionally, I will love you unconditionally. There is no fear now. Let go and just be free. I will love you unconditionally.
I've been to Israel many times, and I've walked where Jesus walked, and you can too. Being in Israel makes the Bible come alive. You can see where Jesus fed the multitudes, where he healed the sick, and where he walked on water. These once-in-a-lifetime moments will change you forever, and it all awaits you in the land of the Bible. Make your plans now to come to Israel and be transformed. Go to cbnisrael.com to start your journey today.
From House of Pain to a modern-day passion, go behind the scenes of Tyler Perry's ambitious new Easter project. Plus, a football star who paid a price for the game.
When I would turn my neck, go.
Find out what punted the pain.
No crack, no pop, no nothing.
And then, a former pro wrestler meets his match.
He knocked me out of wrestling, pretty much a 3-year-old kid.
On the 700 Club.
Well, you're watching the 700 Club the day after the election. The Americans get ready to vote on a new president. It's coming up very shortly. The events have just been overtaking us and overwhelming us, I might add. But while we're selecting a president, we go to Europe. Sweden wanted to show the world a glorious multicultural future. Have you heard about that? Multiculturalism. It sounds so good. But that dream in Sweden got mugged by reality. Immigrants, not multiculturalism, but immigrants have overwhelmed Sweden. And now some of the country's biggest opponents to its immigration policy are immigrants. Dale Hurd brings us that story.
Nima Gholam-Ali-Pour is an immigrant in Sweden. It might not be such a great time to be an immigrant in Sweden. Sweden's notorious open-door policy collapsed after the nation literally ran out of places to house migrants. And a massive crime wave hit asylum centers, with reports of boys raped and an asylum worker murdered. Sweden's immigration policy has been failing for so long that a few years ago, this immigrant joined Sweden's anti-immigration party.
It says a lot about how badly Sweden's immigration model has run off the rails when an immigrant joins a political party that wants to restrict immigration.
Nima says his decision left some Swedes scratching their heads.
They believe that I am confused.
And why would he join a party, the Sweden Democrats, that is regularly branded by the left as a racist party?
It's not a racist party, it's a conservative party. I just chose a party after the program that suited me.
Nima says he's not against immigration per se, just the way Sweden has done it. He came here as a boy from Iran, and today he's a member of the Board of Education in Sweden's third largest city, Malmö, a city which has suffered from immigration. So he's not what you would call a booster for the city of Malmö or for Malmö's troubled schools.
No, they're very bad. The city of Malmö is a very segregated city. So you have areas where a lot of people are unemployed.
He says some schools in bad areas have run out of teachers who speak Swedish.
We use Syrian teachers and teachers from Arab countries or Afghanistan, and they don't speak Swedish.
Nima has a master's degree in international migration and ethnic relations, but he calls Sweden's immigration policy a disaster. He also lives it. He told me he has to wear a hoodie through some Malmö neighborhoods so he doesn't get attacked by immigrant gangs.
I have a hoodie. I usually take a hoodie so no one does anything. You see a group somewhere, and if you live in Malmö, you know that you should avoid them, or else you will get beat up.
It was a trip to the United States that led to his joining a right-wing party. He saw immigration debated openly and honestly in the U.S., something he wasn't seeing in Sweden.
There are a lot of cover-ups about immigration here in Sweden.
The Swedish government and media have long suppressed bad news about immigration. But it all blew up in a major scandal when the public learned that sexual assaults by migrant males against Swedish girls at a summer music festival last year had been covered up. It seems one group that isn't afraid to tell the truth about immigration in Sweden are some of the immigrants, like Swedish economist Tino Sanandaji, who is a Kurd from Iran.
Yeah, immigrants are committing majority of violent crime now. We have reached that point. This is not reported. A lot of people, in fact, the media will go and say this is a myth. And if you believe this, you're a racist.
Or Polish immigrant and Malmö resident Barbara Trusz, who warned us that the future of Malmö would be
hell.
Hell.
Yes.
Sweden has thought of itself as a humanitarian superpower, but Nima Gholam-Ali-Pour says Sweden will not escape the consequences of a reckless immigration policy. He says Swedish society is shattered and ethnic conflict is coming.
We have a majority of children in schools who speak another language than Swedish. So in a generation, Malmö will become a city where ethnic Swedes are a minority. We have had riots in Malmö before, but I think we will have it in the future.
For his part, Nima has gone back to university to become what Sweden needs more of these days, an elementary school teacher. Dale Hurd, CBN News, in Malmö, Sweden.
You can't believe how beautiful those countries are, so-called Scandinavia. If you go to Sweden or you go to Norway, I travel all over Norway, and I've been to Sweden, and there was a guy named Louis Petrus who had a tremendous church in the heart of Stockholm, and I was there and spoke at one of their summer meetings, and saw what looked like a real beginning of a spiritual revival. But in those days, Sweden was like a haven for people who fleeing from the Nazis. And now it has just degenerated. It's just been overrun. And Dale is showing us some really important things. But Wendy, it breaks your heart to see a beautiful country, and it was a beautiful, prosperous country just being demolished.
And you know, and when the immigrants themselves are saying there's a problem with immigration, there's a problem. Yeah.
Well, it's this multiculturalism run amok, it's political correctness run amok, and it is the leftist philosophy run amok. You know, we have to have certain standards. We have to have certain, integrity to our nations, and we have to have a certain ethnic pride. We can't just say, well, everybody's the same, and it isn't necessarily the case, and they're finding it's not the case. The native Swedes have a culture, and it's being demolished before our eyes. It's amazing. Okay.